The mission to find little Gus Lamont isn't over. That's the resounding message tonight from the state's police commissioner.
Elspeth Hussey joins us in the studio, and El Police have announced another search.
They have, Will. This will be the fourth, and all indications are it's unlikely to be the last either. Grant Stevens today revealed police are making plans to return to the remote Yunta sheep grazing station owned by Gus's grandparents, where the 4-year-old vanished without a trace more than a month ago. Now, last week, police drained a dam about 600 metres from the homestead, a mammoth effort that required 3.2 million litres of water to be drained, and it turned up nothing. The police commissioner says the next search will be based on evidence collected during previous visits, including from high-tech drones.
We've been acting on the advice from survivability experts, doctors, medical staff in relation to exactly what the likelihood of Gus, how far Gus might travel and how long he was able to survive without any support or assistance. There is no evidence of foul play at this time, but as I've said publicly before, we are still open to any possibilities that might have resulted in Gus having gone missing.
Now, Grant Stevens has also defended police search efforts over the past 5 weeks. He says 2 reviews were carried out by experts, but they found no criticism of the tactics used by police.
Before you scroll, quick favor, if you want to be first to see every new video, please tap the subscribe button if you haven't already and hit the bell icon, then set it to all. That way YouTube actually sends you a notification the moment a new upload drops. If you already have the bell on, drop a bell in the comments so I know it's working for you. If you don't get notified after turning it on, tell us in the comments too, and I'll share a few quick fixes that might help. Thanks, your notifications mean you never miss an update, and they really help the channel. On a remote sheep property more than a month after 4-year-old Augustus Gus Lamont was last seen, the search has reopened old wounds and sharpened new questions. The latest chapter brought tension to the surface when reporter Jonica Bray, covering renewed activity at the Murray homestead, says she was confronted and threatened with a shotgun. That moment, a flash of danger aimed at journalism itself, tells you as much about the mood on the ground as the facts of the case do. Grief, suspicion, and defensive fear swirl in small communities where everyone knows everyone and where the glare of cameras feels like an assault on private pain. Against that charged backdrop, police have resumed searching, including a focused third sweep that has concentrated on the homestead's dam. The family has kept largely silent through it all, which only deepens public curiosity and frustration. This is a careful, human account of what we know, what is being investigated, and why every small detail matters in a place where the landscape erases traces and time is the enemy. The confrontation reported by Jonica Bray has become emblematic of how raw emotions have made the homestead a volatile place. Reporters and searchers arriving at Oak Park Station have described an atmosphere where protective instincts and suspicion can overflow into outright hostility. According to local accounts, a family member confronted Bray and, in the heat of that moment, brandished a shotgun. Whether the weapon was waved as a warning or held in a threatening posture remains a matter for investigators. What's clear is that the incident chilled the public scene. Journalists often act as the bridge between private tragedy and public accountability, and when that bridge is met with a weapon, it alters the information flow. Witnesses who might otherwise speak to the media may retreat. Volunteers might think twice before returning to the property, and investigators can find access more difficult when hosts are defensive. At the same time, it's important to read that hostility with empathy. Families in this position are grieving, frightened, and sometimes enraged at perceived intrusions. Threats of violence are never acceptable, but they do reveal the intensity of the community's pain and the pressure cooker environment surrounding the search. For authorities, the task is delicate. Protect press safety, ensure public access for legitimate coverage, and at the same time respect a family's right to privacy and grief. For the public, understanding that complexity helps avoid simplistic judgments about a family's reaction in crisis. The disappearance itself began on a day like many others at Oak Park Station, a quiet, remote stretch of South Australian country where homesteads sit a long way from the nearest town. On September 27th, Gus was playing outside near the homestead when his grandmother called him in at about 5:30 p.m. and realized he was not where he should have been. That half-hour window between the last confirmed sighting and the discovery of his absence is the axis around which every subsequent action turns. In a city, 30 minutes might allow cameras to be checked and neighbors to be canvassed quickly. On a remote station, it is a long, dangerous span. Footprints fade under light winds, heat diminishes thermal signatures, and the sheer scale of scrub and paddock space turns a single child's movement into a needle in a haystack. Investigators repeatedly stress that reconstructing a minute-by-minute chronology in those early hours is essential. Who moved where, when gates were opened or closed, which vehicles came and went, and which adults were within earshot. These are not details meant for public shaming. They are practical, operational anchors that guide search grids, prioritize zones, and decide what forensic steps are possible. A contested and consequential detail in this case is the timing of the family's alert. Reporters and community members have noted that the family conducted a private search before calling police, and that formal notification to authorities occurred roughly 3 hours after the grandmother first realized Gus was missing. That private searching is a human reflex. Parents and relatives will always try to find their child before alerting outsiders, but those early actions can also disturb the scene and erase or contaminate evidence that could have helped professional teams. Investigators, when they examine such timelines, are not rushing to blame. They are trying to reconstruct who searched which paddocks, which doors or gates were opened, and what areas remained undisturbed for official teams to check. Every step family members took during those 3 hours can affect what evidence, if any, survives. A footprint can be smoothed, a piece of clothing moved, a smell masked by later movement. Detectives approach this reconstruction clinically. They catalog movement, document who was where, and build a sequence that can be tested against vehicle logs, phone metadata, and other physical traces. Family dynamics and whereabouts that day complicate the picture further. Local reporting indicates the mother, Jessica, was about 10 kilometers away checking on sheep, a routine task on stations, but one that left supervisory responsibilities to others at the homestead. The whereabouts of baby Ronnie, Gus's 1-year-old sibling, and the question of who was watching him at the time remain details of interest to neighbors and investigators alike. The child's father, Joshua, lived some distance away in Blythe North and reportedly only learned of his son's disappearance when police contacted him hours later. Public silence from key family members, whether out of shock, privacy, or strategy, inevitably fuels speculation. The media and the public hunger for answers, and any gap in public communication invites rumor. Investigators take a different view. They treat such absences as investigatory facts to be corroborated. Knowing who was in the area, who knew what and when, and who moved vehicles or opened gates is crucial. To turn speculation into evidence, police gather phone logs, vehicle movements, interviews, and any timestamp material that can pin people to places. Those are painstaking tasks, and they require family cooperation. When family members decline press interviews but still cooperate with detectives privately, the public impression can be one of silence, even when investigative work continues behind the scenes. Despite the practical necessity of careful investigation, public statements from police have been cautiously framed. South Australia police have said there are no suspicious circumstances at this time and that initial assessments are consistent with a child having wandered off. That phrasing is a legal and procedural posture. It reflects the evidence available to investigators at the moment and should not be read as final exoneration or a closed case. For many members of the public, that statement is unsatisfying. Without a clear trace or an arresting answer, no suspicious circumstances sounds like a placeholder rather than a conclusion. Detectives are painfully aware of the difference between a public reassurance and a working hypothesis. They must continue to test wandering against other scenarios like third-party involvement or accidental entrapment, while also debunking wild speculation that can distract from verifiable leads. When police say they see no immediate signs of foul play, they also continue to collect data, re-interviewing witnesses, reviewing camera and phone metadata, and checking for any late-arriving tips that can be corroborated. Search operations themselves have been exhaustive and adapted to the changing logic of the investigation. In this latest phase, authorities resumed targeted searching that included dredging the property's dam, a step that reflects both prudence and the pragmatic reality that water features are frequent sights in rural tragedies. Early wide sweeps aim to discover a person alive. Later, more technical sweeps focus on particular hazards, dams, culverts, depressions, using specialist teams with the right equipment. Dredging a 4.5-meter dam is a specialist task that requires care to avoid contaminating potential evidence and to balance fatalistic outcomes with the necessity of thoroughness. That return to water-focused searching is a reminder that investigations change shape as days pass. Boots on the ground give way to methodical, technical examinations when obvious traces are absent. It's also a signal from police that they will not accept a lack of physical discovery as final until these high-probability locations are exhausted. The Murray family's public silence and refusal to give interviews have been a persistent feature of this case. It's important to underline that families in trauma react in different ways. Some seek public support and attention. Others retreat into privacy to grieve and to cooperate quietly with police. Silence is not guilt. Still, in a small community where social ties are tight and the public looks for answers, silence becomes a narrative force of its own. Reporters and neighbors interpret absence as distance. Online commentators interpret it as secrecy. Investigators, for their part, treat silence as a variable to record and work around. They pursue data sources that do not rely on public statements, phone records, fuel receipts, vehicle logs, neighbor canvases, surveillance footage, and they ask families for private cooperation even if those families refuse media interaction. The consequences of community tension are real and practical. The reported shotgun confrontation is not an isolated incident. It exemplifies how such search operations can escalate into confrontations when grief, pressure, and perceived intrusion collide. For police, managing that tension is another part of the job. Ensure the safety of journalists and volunteers, protect the family from harassment, and make the investigative environment open enough for witnesses to cooperate. For communities, those confrontations are a reminder that supporting investigations means balancing solidarity with law enforcement's needs. Hostility can close off information flows just when they're most needed. Kindness, on the other hand, often invites helpful witnesses to speak up. Finally, this case underlines once more the practical reality of remote searches. Geography, climate, and human movement make them uniquely difficult. The outback erases traces quickly. Wind softens footprints, heat blurs thermal imaging, and volunteer traffic can inadvertently destroy fragile evidence. Investigative work, therefore, must be patient and meticulous. Review call logs, cross-check timestamps, follow up on any vehicle seen near the homestead, and audit the sequence of private searches done by family members. Small, verifiable details, a dashcam clip with a timestamp, a neighbor's recollection of an unfamiliar truck, a fuel docket that places a vehicle near the property at a particular minute, often form the threads that can pull a case out of silence. What can the public do that helps rather than harms? If you were in the region on that day and you have a time-stamped photo or dashcam footage, hand it to police rather than posting it publicly. If you remember a vehicle description, a precise time, or a comment someone made in passing, record it and pass it to investigators. Avoid amplifying unverified speculation online. Viral rumor consumes investigative resources and wounds families who are already suffering. Hold the family in compassion, not judgment. Public pressure is understandable, but accuracy saves time and harms fewer people. This search is far from finished, and the questions remain many. Why the delay in calling police? Who was where at the critical moments? What did the third search of the dam reveal? And what, if anything, will the next tranche of forensic and phone data show? Authorities say investigations continue. The land at Oak Park Station holds its answers close, but every patient thread, each timestamp, each vehicle log, each corroborated tip can change the picture. Keep asking the right questions, keep compassion at the center of the conversation, and if you have verifiable information, pass it to the detectives handling the case. The path from uncertainty to truth is built one careful step at a time. Every small detail matters.